So we're going to start today with revision strategies, or sorry, not again. We're going to start today with editing and proofreading and the difference between the two. And so I'm going to type out my notes and whatnot as we go along. So what we're gonna kind of move into a new screen. This is going to be really bright for you guys. There we go. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about what's called a hierarchy of concern. That hierarchy of concern is based upon compositional theories and things like that. And so it begins with ideas. Switches to dark theme, right? I wish I could. I really wish I could. It starts with ideas, it moves to thesis, and then it moves to organization. Then it goes to style, and then to grammar. And so you're supposed to, yeah. I wish there was a dark mode for this, but there's not. There used to be where you could actually turn the paper blue and the text would be white, and it was much easier on your eyes, but they won't let you do it anymore for some stupid ass reason. So like anything else, when we're working with ideas, ideas can be good or they can be bad. So we're in each one of these, we're working from that good or bad paradigm, right? Sorry. God damn it. Quit it. Fat fingering the shit out of stuff. There we go. So we're going to keep moving down through. Most of what we're talking about as far as editing and proofreading goes, proofreading is going to be about the stuff that's above the organizational line, okay? Or pardon me, that's what editing is going to be. So editing is going to be about the content, right? Proofreading is going to be everything that's about style and grammar. So that's what we're going to deal with today. We're going to be looking at kind of mostly this stuff. So I'm going to talk about the difference between the two, and then we'll be moving down through a list. Okay, so when we talk about editing, right? We talk about editing. Editing is going to involve several things. Okay, it involves higher order concerns and larger changes. So these are the things I'm talking about. Thesis, organization, ideas, that's what it's going to begin with. It's going to concern itself with it. And so what it does is it asks questions like, are your ideas in the correct order? Do you have evidence to support your argument, right? Is it vetted, right? We talked about that in a previous stream. Is it vetted? Have you done what you need to do to make sure that it is accurate, that it's reliable, that it's the most relevant information that you can find? All of those concerns have to be addressed. The answer is I don't know. I got you. So there's a couple different ways, right? If you're talking about are your ideas in the correct order, there's a couple of different ways. You can go from most important to least, or vice versa. Okay, it depends upon what your content is, right? It depends on what your subject matter is, which direction you want it to go. If you're dealing with something that is controversial, that people take exception with, you may want to start with your least important point, right? Your least controversial point, maybe not your least important, but your least controversial point, and then build up to the most controversial point. Because the idea in any composition, especially in any argument, is to start where you can get agreement. You want to start where you can get people's heads to start shaking yes, right? Then you move into the places where they might disagree with you, but they're already agreeing with you, so they give you a little more leeway. They give you a little more rope. And then you have the conversation about the most controversial piece of it, and you're like, well, if you agree with this and you agree with this, then where's the sticking point with this piece of it? And that's how we begin to build consensus. Is how we build useful, logical arguments. Is we begin to move people, because everybody's frozen. Everybody has their own confirmation bias. And then the internet just absolutely rams that down our throat, right? The more shit you like on social media, the more shit like that you see. So you get this internal confirmation bias where yep, I'm fucking right. Or you go to imright.com and you find whatever it is you're looking for. And so you find the people who agree with you and you just go, yep. And that's what they teach composition as in high schools is make an argument, right? Make a claim and then go find, 5 people who agree with you and then write a paper on that. That's not a paper, right? That's not a paper. Okay. That's just, it's basically creating confirmation bias. So that's the deal. If you may want to start with your least controversial, most controversial. You may want to start with what the most controversial, and then show people, the other points that are not so controversial, making the argument that these things are already accepted by society. These things are already accepted by people. So let's just, let's go from there. So. Well, you're not really cherry picking it. With the way we're taught to write papers, yes, Sirath, absolutely, exactly. You're basically limiting the data that you're looking at. That's why I tell students to find the people who disagree with them first, right? And then begin making their argument from that, because then they have both sides of their argument presented, because they already know their side. Okay, so once you do that, right, you determine whether it's vetted or not, and how you're going to organize it. Then you're going to look at things like, do you have effective transitions between paragraphs? Okay. And some people will put those at the end of a paragraph. Some people put them at the beginning of the paragraph. I'm an end of a paragraph kind of guy. I want you to take me from the idea you're working with into the new topic. Some people will put them at the beginning of the next paragraph, which I think breaks paragraph continuity. But there's no wrong way to do that. It's just a preference, right? So you put them at the end of a paragraph, put them at the beginning of a paragraph. It's fine. Either way, I just have that preference. So you figure out where you like them, put them there, be consistent with where you put them, and everything's golden. If you have some at the end, some at the beginning, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, right? Consistency is the key in composition. If you're going to make a mistake, make it consistently. That way it looks like it was planned, and it's not just sloppiness. Right? Go from there, right? The last piece of the editing questions, right? As far as this goes, is you didn't get what I said about the paragraphs. What about the transitions? Right. Okay, so paragraph should transition from one idea to the next, right? The paragraph should be about one idea. They should have one topic. They should be unified. So they need a topic example, an analysis of that example as it pertains to the topic claim. And then you should transition to the next idea, right? Some people do that at the end of a paragraph. Some people do it at the beginning of the next paragraph. There's no right place to put them. It's just a matter of what you prefer. So I'm an end of a paragraph transition person. Other people put them at the beginning of the next paragraph. But that's really all it amounts to, is transitioning from one idea to the next, right? So the last question there is, are you stylistically consistent, right? This is about tone, right? Verb tenses, sentence structures, etc. Okay. Yeah. And most people are, but some people, I've seen students who've been taught to put transitions at the beginning of, and some of my colleagues teach people to put them at the beginning of a sentence, or a sentence of beginning of a paragraph. But that's just not where I put them. So you want to make sure that your verb tenses are consistent, right? You want to make sure that your tone is consistent, that you're not being dismissive. Look at your sentence structures, right? So looking for things like that, things that are so you can put those things in order, right? Style is really just kind of your way of writing, so you just want to make sure that you maintain that. By the way, this right here, the stylistically consistent stuff about tone, sentence structures, and all that kind of stuff, and the words that you're using. Those are not transitions, Fluffenstein. You never want to, if at all possible, you don't want to begin a paragraph with next or secondly or any ly word. It's easier to make just a statement. Transition is supposed to show the relationship between the current idea and the next idea that's coming. It's not just a litany of next, third, fourth. That's not what a transition is. Stylistic stuff is how most teachers catch plagiarists. Sure, I can show you an example. Give me a bit to get through this, and I'll find. Let me see if I can find one of my own examples. Let me see what I can find really quickly. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, so here we go. Let me show you how this works real quick. Okay, so this is an article. I didn't write this. This is actually an article that I'm using for research for a paper that I am writing. This is about manners make the man, politeness, chivalry, and the construction of masculinity, 1750 to 1830. It's really, really interesting stuff. So if you look, this paragraph here says, I want to propose a third approach to the question by suggesting a different trajectory for politeness, right? And so he goes through and he talks about kind of his exceptions with other people's stuff. And then he says, by then the abandonment of self to please others was now considered womanish, and pleasing was no longer a principal attribute of the gentleman. Instead, as regards men, this is where the transition comes in right here. Instead, as regards men, a different system of manners for fashioning the gentleman emerged, one based on a notion of chivalry that had been developing since the middle of the century. This was not an abrupt change. No cultural you see how the transition develops, right? He's going from one idea to the next, right? And then he begins talking about this was not an abrupt change. So he starts that paragraph with a claim rather than next, blah, 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 right? So this is the claim that he's working on. This was not an abrupt change. No cultural transformation is all that straightforward. Indeed, as I will argue later, there was enough overlap between politeness and chivalry to explain why the rise of chivalry in the mid to late 18th century has attracted little attention from historians. So okay? So hopefully that helps. he does the same thing in the next, at the end of this paragraph, right? He gets down here, right here, where he says, this would have important consequences for gender relations. Then he says, one problem that arises when examining cultural constructs. So there's just a transition where he's saying, here's what's coming next. Here's what I'm looking at next. And that's what I'm talking about. Okay? That's a good question. Thank you, Fluffenstein. Cool. Okay. So, as you begin to edit your papers, you're going to end up making several passes. So you're going to try and make several passes through your essays rather than trying to find everything at once. Because if you try to do it all at once, you're going to fail. You're going to miss stuff. You're going to do some really crazy shit. So you gotta make sure that you're doing this in a logical order. So you're going to move. Let me bullet point this. You're going to move from higher order concerns to lower order concerns. Okay. First, look for info that doesn't fit. Or isn't supported. So one of the ways to do this is what we covered in class before the coronavirus took us out of the class, with the honest outline. Okay, so you should have folks should have notes on that. For those who weren't in the class, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but basically the honest outline is sitting down and making an outline after you've written something, and outlining each paragraph based upon what's there rather than what you hope to write, as traditional outlines do that you make before you write. So you write, then you look at your paragraphs, and then you go, okay, where's my topic sentence? Where's my example? Where's my analysis of that example? Where's my transition? And you copy those things and paste them into a blank document that has an outline, so that you can move them physically from one place to another. If they're not there, if you can't highlight something and move it, then that's where you need to spend your energy. And so that's where you find information info that's not supported, or information that it's not where it belongs, right? Because it'll be in a paragraph where it's not supported. It doesn't have a defensible position. So that's the first thing you want to do. It takes some time, takes some energy. You want to do one paragraph at a time. Don't sit down and try to do a fucking 10-page paper in an afternoon, because you will not make it. You will not make it, right? You can try, right? But you're going to get frustrated. You're going to make some bad decisions, and you're going to miss some stuff, right? And so you want to look at one paragraph at a time. When you get done with that paragraph, right, and make sure that it's complete, right? If everything's there, it's not going to take you very long to do that. Move to the next paragraph. If everything's there, it's not going to take you very long. Once you get through about 3 or 4 paragraphs, you want to take a break, right? Go get something to drink, come back, work through the next paragraphs. If you've got one where you've got a lot of work to do, you may just want to spend the time on that paragraph before you do anything else, and then take a break, and then come back, look at the next one, right? That's working as a process rather than a product, right? So that's my advice. It's free and worth every fucking penny, right? So the second thing you want to do, the second pass, you want to rearrange for clear presentation of your argument. You want to look at a logical progression, right? Does it move from most to least? Does it move from least to most? Does it need to be broken because you're working from a chronological position of and then like talking to a 5-year-old telling you a story? It's and then. And if you interrupt them kids, they're gonna start all over again, right? So you just gotta sit there and fucking whoo, does this story have an end, right? So you just gotta, and so if you find yourself using a lot of chronological words, right, that mean time, like then, next, during this time, right, that kind of stuff, you're working from a chronological position, and you need to fracture that so that you're more focused on ideas than telling a story, right? So sometimes we have to kind of break that and put things in a different order so we can fracture chronology and work from ideas rather than time. So if you have trouble with that, right, get somebody else's eyes on it. Get somebody else to read it. Ask them that question. Does this seem logical to you, right? Make that honest outline. Then you're not dealing with sentences and 250 words on a page. You've got bullet points that you can look at and go, okay, does this seem logical? Do I need to move this here? Right? You can work from that outline. That's why we build scaffolds, right? Is so that we can learn how to build things and make them useful, right? So we don't build them upside down. Okay, so that's that. Third, this is going to get long. You guys are going to be like, Jesus Christ, how many times do I have to read this paper? All the times. You have to read it all the times. So third thing you're going to do is you're going to fill in gaps in your argument. That's why you did that outline, right? That's why you did that outline. Then you're going to look at your argument overall, right? Then you're going to look and go, okay, do I have a clear presentation of it? Does it make sense logically? And then you go, okay, so where are my gaps, right? Because if you move things around, if you move paragraphs around, you're going to have to build new transitions for those paragraphs, right? Because if you take this idea and put it before this one, your transition in this paragraph to the idea that came after is no longer going to work. So you got to keep an eye on that stuff as well, right? So you're going to fill in gaps, right? Fourth, you're going to look at, hang on a minute, you're going to look at paragraphing. Right? Does it support your thesis? I remember in class we talked about the T modeling of paragraphing, right? So that's topic, example, explanation, right? Or topic, example, analysis, right? So that's that's the three components you have to have for a paragraph to be what's considered comprising complete thought. Then you want to make your transitions from idea to idea, right? So keep that in mind, right? As you go forward, that's the next thing you want to look at, right? And which brings us to the next point, right? The next point that we're going to look at is transitions. Okay. Moving from one idea to the next, right? These are designed, they should show the relationship between your ideas or points of interest. Okay? Sixth, and that's getting long, huh? Sentences. God, I get tired of fucking marking sentences. Sentence structures. Sentences. Are they complete? Are they varied? Right? You don't want it to read like a Dick and Jane book. It'd be like, short staccato sentences they're shitty to read, right? That's why we don't like to read those books to kids, right? See Dick run, see Dick fall, right? That kind of stuff. That's why children's books are written the way they are, is because those children are learning the language. They're learning how to read the language, so we keep the sentences short so they can grasp the entire idea. Keep in mind that English is it's a word order specific language, but our words do not carry meaning, our phrases do. right? That's why when somebody asks you a definition of a word, you say, give it to me in a sentence, because the context, the syntax in which that word is used is going to tell you what the meaning is, right? Or give you what's called a context clue that we all learned back in first, second, third grade or what have you. They didn't have those when I was a kid. They just expected us to be able to do this shit, and they were not nice about it. So that's you got to make sure that they're complete. You got to make sure they're varied, right? You want simple sentences. You want compound sentences. You want complex sentences. You want compound complex sentences, right? I believe so, Ismail. I can't say all languages. The languages I'm familiar with, yes, they are. So the languages I'm familiar with, as far as structure goes, are English, Spanish, Latin, and German. And the three variants of English: Old English, Middle English, and Modern English, which Modern English comprises, some fucking 4,000 different dialects. I don't know all of those, but I'm familiar with the concepts, because they're all based off the same structural ideas. But I think most languages are that way. I think it's a logical thing for us to kind of make our sentences simple and then make them more complex. So I did this study when I was in graduate school, because I read an article that said, hey, it was a fascinating article. I'll see if I can find a copy of it. It's called The Phenomenology of Error. Amy, can you see if you can find me a copy of that? Hang on a second. Phenomenology of Error. I want to say that's right. Phenomenology. It's close enough. No, that may not be right. Anyway, phenomenology. I don't know I can't remember how to spell the word. It's not a word I look up very often. But if you could find a copy of that. So what that article said was that we read freshman composition different than we read everything else. That student writing is more heavily critiqued than anything else we read anywhere in the rest of our lives. We look at a book, a journal article, a magazine, a fucking post on Facebook, whatever. We do not go at it with the same level of critique that we do freshman composition or student writing, because we are predisposed to read student writing to look for errors. We expect them to make mistakes. Whereas, thank you, Ismail. I was like, I know it's out there. I just couldn't remember how to spell it. I'm trying to think really fast. Thank you. So, so when we read an article, a book, or what have you, if we see a mistake in it, we don't automatically think that person is somehow mentally deficient. Somehow there's something, they're just lazy, they're stupid. The way some instructors do when they look at student composition. We chalk it up to bad editing. We chalk it up to something else, or it was a typo, big deal, right? We don't automatically discount that person's point. We don't discount their intellect. We don't do that stuff, right? But we do in student writing, right? We're predisposed to think that way. And so he writes this entire article, right? And then at the end, he kind of tells you what's going on with it, right? And I'm not gonna give you the spoiler. But if you read the article, it's a fascinating study in kind of the way we engage with writing, and he proves his point at the end. And so I wanted to see if what he said was right. And so I went back through my own writing. I went through my own papers. I started when I was a freshman in college. I went all the way up through graduate school. What I found was I was still making the same mistakes as a senior graduate student that I was making as a freshman, but here's the key to it all, right? My sentence structures had gone from 7.8 words per sentence to 22.6. My average word count, right, had gone up, right? Which means I was using much more complex sentences. I was using much more complex ideas. The average length of my words went up, everything, right? So I was using much more technical writing. And so it seemed I was making fewer errors, but they were just farther apart, right? which led me to making this thing that I hand out to my students called How to Write Enough Paper, which is, it's about the grammar mistakes that we all make, and we all need different grammar instruction, and nobody can teach you everything, because in the second grade you were absent the day they talked about fucking past participles or whatever, or you were looking out the window, right, or what have you, and you missed that, right, and that's not in your toolbox now. So there's pieces that we all miss, right, and so we can't learn those rules, right? We can't undo that. What we can do is learn the mistakes that we make and then become better editors of our own work, right? We create what's called a style sheet, which is what we're going to end up with when we talk about this. We're going to end up with a style sheet that's going to help you identify the mistakes you make, right? And then help you pull that sheet out whenever you're going through your work and go, okay, I need to look for verb tenses and make sure they're all this. I need to look for this. I write sentence, right? Whatever it is, whatever you have an issue with, it's going to help you build that style sheet so that you can go through your work and go, here's the things that I need to work on. Here's the things I need to look for in my own writing, so you become a better editor of your work. So, okay, so I think I beat that horse long enough. But Amy didn't answer me, so I don't know if she's looking for that or not. Oh, so the question, Amy, you were chasing dogs. I got you. So my question was, if you could see if you could find a copy of the article titled Phenomenology of Error. It should be the phenomenology of error. So let me put that in there. So there. If you could find, there should be a copy of it somewhere. It's a really great study in why we read the way we read. So that's the thing about sentences and whatnot. So you can just link it. And then I'll grab it. I have a copy of it that's printed out. I just don't have an electronic copy. So. It's an older article, so we should be able to find a electronic version of it somewhere. I can't remember exactly when it was written. It might have been written 1988, 89, somewhere on there, I think. It's a fascinating study. I think a guy named Williams wrote it, I think. Yeah. I don't remember. 1980. Okay, right. I knew it was old. All right, so the seventh thing you want to do, right? This is your seventh path through this paper. Good Lord, man. Big War, how are you? So the seventh path you want to go through is you want to look at word choices, right? This is called diction, right? You want to look at diction, right? Are you using the same word over and over again? Are you varying the word? This is not an opportunity for you to just go crazy with a fucking thesaurus. That's not what I'm talking about, right? What I'm saying is, are you using words like well? Are you looking at things like regardless, right? If you're looking at so are you using the same word? Sometimes there's no other word, right? Sometimes there's no other word, so you need that word. Like if you're talking about DNA, there's no other term for DNA, right? It doesn't exist. So that's the exception to it. But if you've got little functional words, right, you change those up. Don't use adjectivals when you don't need them, okay? Don't say it's very good, right? Use a new word for that. Very is the least very word in the English language, right? If you want to see an example of that, just pull up any fucking time Donald Trump's speaking on camera, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, because he's very, 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 right? Because he has a fucking, the vocabulary of a fucking 7-year-old, My daughter was more eloquent in speech by the time she was 7 to 8 years old than Trump is at this point, or most politicians really. But So look at your diction. Look at what words are you using? Do they mean exactly what you need them to mean, right? Is there a more appropriate word, right? So look through that kind of stuff, right? The last thing, this is the last trip through, you want to look at spelling and punctuation. I'm going to point you at Grammarly.com. Okay, I'm gonna, oops, www.grammarly.com. Okay. Okay. If you don't know what Grammarly is, if you're not affiliated with Grammarly yet, let's take a look at what Grammarly is. Let's go to this one. Okay. Okay, so Grammarly is probably the best grammar and spell checker on the planet, right? And it's free, okay? It was created by linguists. It was created by people like me, not computer people, right? Computer, like your Microsoft Word stuff was created by computer folks. Grammarly was created by linguists, people who understand the language, who understand why the language functions the way it does, and so it works the way we need it to work. Okay, it is a Chrome extension. You can add it to your Chrome browser. Once you have it and you've set it up, you can add it to Microsoft Office. You can add it to your phone. You can add it to any platform that you work with, and it will check everything you write, whether that's a paper, an email, a Facebook post, whatever, right? It will check everything that you write. Now, here's the great part of Grammarly. Grammarly doesn't just tell you that you've made an error, it tells you why it's an error. It explains to you the rule that governs that mistake, right? All commands have been disabled, Brendan, all of them, except two, and they're the only ones that I can use. Yeah, Grammarly is amazing. So when you look at Grammarly, right? I'm just gonna, let's see. Yep, let's continue. Yep, sign in. Okay. So this is what you're going to see, right? You're going to see this right here. It's going to ask you some questions about, when you get into Grammarly, it's going to ask you some questions about, like, what is your writing skill, right? What type of writing do you do, right? Answer those questions honestly. Don't overestimate your skill as a writer, because you're going to screw yourself in the long run. So what happens is, you go into My Grammarly, you'll see that I've got some things here. We go into my account. There's security style guide, so you can go into a style guide and you can get Grammarly Business. You can utilize whatever it is that you need to do. There are apps, so you can get Grammarly for Microsoft Office, Grammarly for Windows, whatever it is that you need to do. There's a premium account that you pay for. You don't really need that unless you're a professional writer. You don't need that. You don't need it at all, right? So don't worry about that stuff. Okay. So you go back here. I'll show you what it does, right? So I'm going to open this paper. This is a paper that I've worked on. All right, I'm still working on it, right? So what you'll see is it's checking through everything, right? And then it comes up over here. We found 356 additional writing issues. This is for the premium stuff, okay? Don't get baited into that. Yes, it is an app. It absolutely is an app. It's available on every platform. You can get it on your phone. You can get it on a tablet. You can get it. Because it's a Chrome extension, and then they have an app that you can. But you have to register for their website first, I believe. I haven't put it on my phone because I don't do a lot through my phone. So it's going to change a word and it got display. Yeah, sometimes it works. So, all right. So they're trying to bait you into the go premium thing, right? And so you just don't need to do that unless you're a professional writer. It'll give you alerts over here that tell you, what you're looking at. It's engaged. My writing's engaging. There are places that it's a bit unclear. This is a first draft of a paper that I just dropped in here for me to use as an example. So it has 72 alerts for correctness, right? So I type, I draft, I make mistakes. I don't go back and correct them. I just draft, and then I get the ideas out, and then I begin working with them. You should be able to, Ismail. You shouldn't have to pay for anything, but you will need an account, right? So yeah, this is just a draft of it. So this is not the one that I put up on Blackboard. This is a little different. So when you go into, I'm going to close that down. And so when you begin to go into the paper, right, it goes into, and it says, okay, so in the history of warfare, every major society has had its heroes, men of extreme martial prowess who have been venerated in their own lifetime. So it doesn't like that I've used the word own, so it's called tautology, right? And so you're like, okay, well, it's tautology, right? So you see it's telling me, it wants me to conciseness, get that out of there, right? If you want to learn more, you click the learn more, and it drops down and it says tautological phrases such as final outcome, red in color, and I personally express the same information twice, right? Avoid using repetitive words when writing, especially in formal situations. So that's what it's telling me to do. It's telling me to take this word out, right? Because it should just say men of extreme martial prowess who've been venerated in their lifetimes and elevated to mythical statuses as time passes. That's what it wants me to do, right? So if you don't know what something is, click the Learn More button. It'll explain to you. It gives you examples of it, right? From this, you can say it's an incorrect suggestion, which is, most people would not do that. Right, so I can look at fact. I need to remove the comma. Why do I need to remove the comma? It appears that you have an unnecessary comma and a compound predicate. Consider moving it, right? Do the same thing here. A predicate tells us something about the subject. It includes a verb, and any other modifier as a compound predicate includes verbs that go with the same subject, right? So it gives you examples. This is what Grammarly does, right? And it gives you all of this stuff in very real time, right? There's another tautological, where's this one at? Should be than, yeah. I'm trying to find a different, where's this one? The pronoun. So here's the thing you have to look for. This is actually within a quote. Okay, this is actually a quote, right? So I can't change this. Okay. So when you look at it and it says I have preferred adjectives which express their potential goodness, I can't change this because it's actually within a quotation that I'm using from somebody else's work. So from that case, I have to ignore that one, right? Yeah, it's called Grammarly. Yep. So this is all from a quote, right? And there's different stuff that I have to work at. So you have to make sure it's called Grammarly Keyboard. Okay, cool. So this is Grammarly is amazing for this. The one thing I'll tell you is Grammarly does not work with Google Docs, and the reason it doesn't work with Google Docs is because Google Docs is a shit program. Okay, it's terrible, and I'm not saying that subjectively. I'm telling you objectively, it's a shit program. It is a cut down version of a word processor that's designed to load quickly because that's what Google likes. They like to load shit quickly. It functions in the same way that, is there really a difference between a $30,000 car and a $1,000 car? No. In function, they do the same thing, right? But when you're working through professionalism and you're working through college and you're trying to do that stuff, go with the word processor that's built for it, not the shit one that's thrown up there, right? It's bad. So that's the deal. Grammarly is really, really helpful. I use it. Obviously, I use it all the time, because even all the years I have in writing, there's still things I can learn. Nobody knows all the rules to this stuff, right? And anyone who claims to know all the rules is a liar, right? They're full of shit. Because nobody knows all the rules. There's some 30 rules governing comma usage in English. Nobody knows them all, right? That's why we have textbooks, so you can go look that shit up, right? But they just don't function that way, right? So this is what editing is, right? When we look at things like proofreading is concerned with lower order, right? Concerned with lower order concerns. Things like mechanical errors, and formatting. Okay. You only do this when you're sure your essay is conceptually complete. Oops. And stylistically sound. Okay. This is why most students never actually proofread, because they know the work they're turning in is not good. They know it because they threw it together at the last minute. They don't have time to do this. They never get to the point where it is conceptually complete. They never get to the point where it's stylistically sound. They never get to the point where they're concerned with mechanical errors and things of that nature. So they just never get to it. They turn in half-ass work, right? And then they get mad at the teacher. Well, you can be mad at me. I don't really care. I have never lost sleep over somebody being mad at me. So you want to proofread for only one kind of error at a time. This is about focus, right? You want to make sure that you're focused, right? This is for essay writing, primarily academic writing, but you can use, it can be adapted to any kind of writing. The editing process is really kind of focused towards academic essays or business type of things. You wouldn't want to use this process for creative writing, because creative writing is going to not be focused on things like transitions and paragraph unity, that kind of stuff. It's more focused on telling a story than it is relating ideas in a logical manner. So this really applies to this. That's why it's called composition theory, is it really applies to compositional writing, where we're doing expository idea generating writing and sharing those ideas. All right. So that's the deal with the difference between editing and proofreading. Editing takes a lot longer, right? But the more time you spend in your editing process, the less time you spend in your proofreading process. So you can shorten, you put the work on the front end, you shorten the amount of work needed on the back end, so that you're able to work through the final steps of polishing a paper much more quickly. Okay. All right, so let's look at some ways for you to kind of manage time, especially if you're working from home. I'm just going to go to a new page. And so this is managing time, interruptions, and maximizing productivity. Okay, so most of the time, whenever I come in and if I comment on somebody's paper, and I tell them you need more content within this paragraph, what they do is they play what I call academic pin the tail dummy, the tail on the donkey. Right? Oops. Let me learn how to type again. Academic pin the tail on the donkey. This is where the writer places the cursor. So he places a cursor at the end of the paragraph and just starts adding words, right? This is where you're just hoping some shit fits, right? People don't read the paragraph. They just go, okay, I need more content here, so I'm just going to look at what the topic is. I'm going to write some more shit. And they hope that it works, right? It's throwing darts in the dark, right? You're just never going to get there, right? So, the reason what it does is this causes paragraphs to become disjointed and ununified. Right? So what I try to get people to do is go back into the paragraph and look for places where you can answer questions, where you can be more specific, where you can add detail to something, right? The goal is to be more specific, not add to the ambiguity. Okay, so go back into the paragraph, look for ways you can be more specific, places you can answer questions, you can give more detail about something, and that adds meaningful content to a paragraph, and it actually lengthens the paragraph. If all of your paragraphs are the same length throughout an essay, you're doing something wrong. If they all are about the same all the way through, you're doing something wrong, because we all have a little internal clock that tells us get out of that paragraph, get out of that paragraph, because we've been taught that paragraphs are a certain number of sentences or what have you, which is all bullshit. Your paragraph should be of varied length, because you have more to say about some things and less to say about others. Some things are more easily discussed, explained, right, than other things are. So you just want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're dispelling ambiguity. You're being more clear, right? Add clarity. It always comes into adding meaningful content if you're adding clarity. If you're just adding stuff, right, then you're going the wrong direction, right? Back that out to there. Okay. Okay. The next thing to look at is what's called embracing recursiveness. Okay. Recursive is not a word that you're going to find in any dictionary, right? It's just not there, right? I'm going to add it to my dictionary because it is a word that specifically, it's jargon specifically used by compositionists, right? Composition theorists. So if you want to know what recursiveness is, right? The analogy I use most often is if you've ever had a slinky, right? You know, the springs and whatnot. If you've ever had a slinky, and you take that slinky and you pull it apart just a little bit, right? You'll see that it looks from the side, it looks like it loops back on itself. That looping back is the recursiveness. That's why it's called cursive writing. It's because it's a looping of letters. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does, right? So this is the looping of ideas back onto themselves. Okay, that's what recursiveness is, right? It's a normal part of the it's a normal, good Lord, stop it, part of the writing process. It's just magic, right? It's all based on inertia, right? It's a normal part of the writing process because we need to review our ideas before moving forward. Okay? So it's a review process. It's what we do. We write an idea and then we get to a point where we don't know what to say next. So we begin looping until we think of the next thing and then we move forward again, right? And so that's the process. Oops, let me do this. The goal is not to remove recursiveness, but rather to limit it and to increase discussion between recursive passages in an effort to reduce the feeling of redundancy to reduce the feeling of redundancy throughout our work. So the thing about it, so when you look at that slinky from the side, right, you've got those little loops, right, and they're really close together, right, and so this is what happens if we don't have a lot of content in between those recursive bits in our writing. It seems like we're being repetitive and redundant, right? And so what we've got to do is we don't want to remove the recursive pieces. What we want to do is if you take a metal slinky and you pull it apart, right, you can never get the wire straight. It always still has a little loop in it, right? And so you've got these, but now instead of being this close, they're like this, right? And those little recursive bits now become our transitions from one idea to the next. So they serve a function, right? But we've got to go back into those paragraphs and expand them from the middle, because if you just go and tack shit on the end of it, you're just wasting your time, because you're not going to have the ability to put that stuff in. Okay, Ismail, thank you. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you. So that's what we want to do. We don't want to get rid of recursiveness. We want to spread it apart so it's not so readily apparent and it's not so visible to everybody, right? That's the goal, right? So, go back out. We did. The next thing you want to do as far as time management goes is you want to embrace fear, right? This is a real thing, okay? Fear of failure is normal. We all have that fear, right? And it's the most powerful motivator known to humankind. right? Fear motivates almost everything that we do, right? It's why we get up out of bed and go to work in the morning, right? We don't want to do it, but we have to eat. We have a place to stay. We have, right, all these things, and you know, fear of being homeless, fear of not being able to eat is a very real thing that's out there. So embrace that fear, engage it, let it help you motivate. Fear can be motivating or it can be paralyzing, right? You want to find the motivating side of it, right? Because it will keep you working when you don't want to, right? It will keep you pushing forward when you're tired. It will keep you going, right, when you think you can't go anymore, right? So embrace that fear, right? Don't let it paralyze you, right? If you feel like it's paralyzing you, reach out to me, right, and let me help you get through it, right? Let me kind of put things in perspective for you so you can get beyond that stuff. I have a really good way of kind of giving people a perspective that they can work with, because as I say all the time, we're writing essays here. We're not curing cancer, right? We're not slingshotting people to fucking Mars. We're not doing any of that stuff. We're writing papers. There's nothing about this that is life-threatening, right? So I know folks have anxiety. Anxiety is not fear, okay? Fear is real. Anxiety is perceived. It's not necessarily a real thing. It is a perception. And so you can manage that, right? You can manage that. Fear is one of those things that we have to learn to embrace, right? So, you know, right, papers and slinkies, right? I have a friend of mine I call Slinky because I'd like to watch him fall down a flight of stairs. But actually, I call him Slinky because his old lady pushed him down the stairs once. So the next thing you want to do is you want to embrace urges, right? And you can fucking define that shit however you want to. If you're thirsty, go get something to drink. If you're hungry, go get something to eat, right? If you feel like, fuck, I gotta get out of this room, then get the fuck out of that room, right? Whatever you need to do, right? If you have an overwhelming sense to do it, then go do it, right? Don't tell me what to do, right? Right? Here's the deal. If you're distracted, you won't be effective. It's not enough to be good. I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say this. I was watching a video yesterday. I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say this, that he said, it's not enough to be good. You have to be effective. And I was like, damn, that's a profound thing to say. It seems readily apparent, right? But it's one of those things that I've never heard anybody say it, right? It's not enough to be good. You have to be effective, right? And so you can be a good writer, right? But are you effective at what you're doing? Are you effective at the composition process, right? Or you're a good writer, but you hate writing because you're not effective at the process, right? That's where most people are. Most people are much better at writing than they think they are. They just don't have a process. It's just fucking shotgun patterns, willy-nilly chaos, right? And people are better at it than they think they are, right? Yeah, don't rest on your laurels. Don't get complacent, right? Make a process, work that process. That's everything that I teach, right? As far as composition, everything that I teach is process oriented. If you look at this, everything I've talked about today, it's all process related, right? Everything. Because the process is more important than the product. So, right? So you won't be effective. Learning to focus for extended periods of time is a learned skill. Or response, right? You have to practice. Most people, when they sit down to begin writing something or work on something, they've got maybe 15 to 20 minutes of focus in them, right? Especially if it's something they don't want to do, right? So set yourself a timer, right? Set yourself a timer. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is you think your focus time is, right? If you feel yourself waning away from that, right, look at how much time has expired. That's your focus limit right now, okay? So set that, right? Right? So you want to set yourself a focus timer, right? See how long you can focus, right? And then, right, try to give yourself 10% more, 20% more, right? Whatever it is you think you can deal with, right? And then you stay focused. You feel your brain start, right? Then you just refocus yourself until that timer goes off. Once that timer goes off, right, reward yourself. Get up. Go do something else. Go get a drink of water, right? Go take a walk, whatever you got to do. Come back, do that focus timer again, right? Work on your focus time, right? If you're really dedicated to something and you're really good at something, you can focus for about 40 to 50 minutes at a time, and then you need a break, which is why college classes are 50 minutes, 50 minutes, 50 minutes, or they're 75 minutes. And if you talk to professors like me who like to teach the 75-minute classes, right? If you come into my class and you see what we're doing, right, and you watch what I'm doing, I'm going to give you 20 to 25 minutes of something, then we're going to fucking switch topics. And I'm going to give you about 20 to 25 minutes of that, and then we're going to switch topics, right? Because I'm trying to make you refocus, because you guys have an expiration timer on your ability to focus on what it is I'm talking about before I just become a drone, right? So I'm constantly trying to change what it is that I'm talking about. I'm giving it to you in different ways and different things to see. I'll change the topic, and it seems like I'm getting really off topic, but I'm really doing this circumnavigational thing that's called Bakhtinian dialogism, where you work in loops back to the main topic, right? But you've got to show it to people in different ways. So that's one of the things I do in the classroom, right? Dark Ivan, welcome. All right. Yeah, that's why they use timers, right? Because you gotta have a break. You gotta have a break, Zeroth. Exactly. So, and so learn how to focus is why you go to school. No, you go to school to be indoctrinated, JDB, into a specific set of behaviors. School is, the K through 12 system is much less about educating than it is teaching you how to behave, how to do what you're told. When you come to college, it's much more open to kind of educating and knowledge and all that stuff, right? So it's a learned skill response. Work on your focus time, right? And then you'll be able to work longer, right? Be more productive, but don't try to sit down and write a paper in 3 hours, because it's just going to be a bunch of shit, right? And everybody already knows this, but they continue to try to do it, right? It's maddening. It's maddening, right? The next thing is to mitigate interruptions, right? This is back to the timer. Mitigate interruptions, right? Turn your phone off. It has an off button. I promise you. They all have an off button. All right? Turn your phone off. All right? Seclude yourself. At this point, right, if you're at home and you've got other people in the house with you, right, they need to understand that you need time to work, that you need time to go and do what you need to do, right? Also, build yourself a workspace that when you go to that space, your purpose there is to work. Not to play video games, not to bullshit around, not to look at your phone, right? Make a workspace, right? So that you begin training your brain that when I go to that space, I've got to be productive, right? When your focus timer is done, you leave that space. You go do something else, you come back, right? And make sure that your breaks are just as long as your focus time. That's the key. That keeps you productive, because then you've got something to work for. Because if you've got a 40-minute work focus, right, then you get a 40-minute break, okay? You get to go and relax, do something else, and then come back and do that work, right? And you learn to train yourself to reward yourself, which is the next thing I'm going to go through. But right now, mitigating interruptions is the thing. If you've got a family at home, They need to understand that you need time to work, right? I did this when I was in college with my daughter, right? I got an egg timer, right? Fucking little egg timer, just wind it up, right? Something that she could use, right? And when I was at home in the mornings with her, right, I would need, if I had work I needed to get done, right, or the afternoons or whatever, and she and I were home during the day, right, I would say, okay, Daddy needs 20 minutes, okay, give me 20 minutes, right, and she goes, I don't know what 20 minutes, I don't know what you're talking about, right, and so I say, okay, so it's an opportunity for you to teach them numbers, right, you teach them, here's 20 minutes on an egg timer, right, whatever it is, we're gonna put that. When that timer goes off, you come and knock on the door, and Dad will come out and play with you, right? And so she would be like, okay. So she would let me go work, and when that timer went off, I could hear her little feet down the hallway. She'd knock on the door, and she'd say, the timer went off, right? And I'd be like, all right, cool. And I would stop what I'm doing, immediately stop what I'm doing, right? If I was working on a sentence or whatever, I would finish that, right? Finish that thought. And then I would get up and I would go and I would play Barbies with her or whatever it is she wanted to do, right? Because that does a couple things for kids. One, it teaches them that what you're doing is important, right? And that they are important, right? But you just need a little bit of time to get some work done, and then you'll come and play with them, right? So it teaches them patience. It teaches them that schoolwork is important, right? And it teaches them how to work as a process, right? And so you begin to kind of train everyone around you, right? Because we teach people how to treat us. We teach people what is acceptable, right? Behavior within our environment. So we have to begin to do that, right? Pavlov's egg timer, exactly. But you know what? Pest dummy. My daughter today in college is doing the same stuff, right? She's working in increments. She's working as a process. She's not sitting down trying to work, 6 hours on writing a paper or a project. She's working the process a little bit every day, and then she has more time to do the things that she enjoys when the weekend comes around, because she's not sitting and writing a paper for 4 hours, right? Thank you, little killer. Great. Welcome. Hope you're having a good day. So mitigate interruptions, right? So seclude yourself. Eat beforehand, okay? Try to get that done, right? Have snacks. This is the part that Amy loves. Have snacks and drinks available, so you can work those, so you can continue to work. Put your pets outside. They don't have to go outside the house, but they need to be outside of wherever you're working, right? Limit their unless if you got a dog who just goes over in the corner and lays down, fuck, that's fine, right? Like my cat's right over there in a chair, right? In an old office at the end of my hallway, there's one of my old office chairs with a blanket on it. Right, and that's where she likes to sleep. She's fine right there as long as the door's open, because she can see me. Right, she's a weird ass cat. Right, my little Azure that you guys see on stream all the time. Yeah, you got to feed and water your brain. You got to have something while you're thinking, right? We do our best thinking when we're distracted, right? When we have something else to focus on, our subconscious processes stuff. That's why we have great ideas in the shower. We have great ideas while we're driving, right? You have great ideas right before you go to sleep, right? And you're like, God damn it, right? And you're like, I'll write it down in the morning, and you never remember it in the morning. But that's why. Put your pets outside, right? If you have kids, right, like I said, there's one way to do it, right? Sometimes you just put kids in a closet. Don't put them in a closet. Don't do that. That's mean. I wouldn't do that. Another thing you can do, if you're like me, I get distracted. Like my train of thought's very fragile. If you guys have seen, it's like a bag of cats some days. The thing that drives me crazy, right? Is the intermittent noise of the world, the closing of the car door, someone coughing, especially if I'm home by myself. That scared the fuck out of you, right? That kind of stuff. The intermittent noises, right? Not the constant noise of the world. The intermittent stuff is the stuff that breaks my train of thought. So what I do is I turn on music that's familiar to me, or like what we're listening to right now, right? And I use it as white noise to quiet the world and allow my brain to do what it does. Okay? So those things are, that's one of the best things you can do, right? In my lit class, people have asked, can I listen to music while I take an exam? Sure. I don't give in-class exams anymore. They're all done at home. So because they're open book, open notes. They're all essay exams. So yeah, do whatever you want to do. But when I gave in-class exams and people wanted to listen to music, I didn't have a problem with listening to music. I know professors, when I was in college, they used to bring music to class on test days, right? And it was music like this, well, elevator music, so to speak, because it helps reduce test anxiety for people. It calmed people. They would also, like turn off some of the lights in the classroom so that it wasn't so acerbic and so sterile and so clinical, which reduces anxiety. So, I mean, there's ways to do that. There's lots of ways to manage mitigate your interruptions and whatnot. The big thing, right? The big thing is to control people's access to you, and that is a good rule for life all the way around. Baconator, how are you, brother? It's good to see you. So that's a key to life, right? People do not have a right to have access to you 24 hours a day. I don't give a fuck who they are. I don't care if it's your significant other. I don't care if it's your mom, your dad. The only people that should have 24-hour access to you are the people you live with, the people who are in your home. Like if they're your kids and they rely upon you for survival, cool, right? Your friends don't need to talk to you all the time, right? They don't. If your significant other cannot live without talking to you for 45 to 50 minutes at a time while you're trying to secure your future, right? Get out of that relationship. That's what I'm going to tell you. Get out of that relationship. Because you're in a relationship with a codependent person, and they're going to drag you down like an anchor, right? So they should respect your boundaries. They should respect your goals. They respect what you're working on, right? And be respectful at all times about it, right? So, all right, that's cool. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is about rewarding yourself, right? Reward yourself. Okay? You want to set goals for each session and reward yourself when you meet them. Okay? Set goals for yourself. If your goal is you're going to work, right, and don't make them content goals. Don't make I'm going to write 3 pages. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that, because that you don't know how long that's going to take, right? And you set a goal now, right? It's like if you go outside to run and you haven't ran in fucking 6 months, and you go outside to run and you say I'm going to run 3 miles. What happens to your self-esteem? What happens to your confidence? Right? What happens to your exercise plan when you only make it half a mile? Think about that, right? It's damaging to you psychologically. You're just like, Jesus Christ, 6 months ago I could do blah, 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 but now I can only do this. That's self-defeatist talk, right? That's a negative place. It's negative space. That's not productive. What you got to do is you got to set those goals for yourself, that focus timer. Set that goal, right? With your kids, right? You say, hey, look, Mommy, Daddy, I need to get this work done, right? Give me 20 minutes, right? Make that 20 minutes productive, right? You get that 20 minutes done, bang! You achieved a goal that day, right? The first thing, here's the other thing I tell people is, especially in these times when we're all kind of locked in our houses, if you have a work day scheduled, right? Treat it like a regular work day. Don't get up at noon and expect to be productive, because you won't. You won't. You might be a little productive, but you're not going to be really productive, right? Treat it like a regular work day. Get up at a regular time, shower, get yourself dressed, get ready to go to work, and then go to work, right? That puts your mind in a place of workspace instead of lounge on the couch space, right? You guys look and you're like, well, you're sitting there at your fucking desk, Mr. Smart Guy, in a fucking sleeveless shirt. Yeah, it's because I go to work like this. I'll just wear a hoodie over it or whatever, right? I don't wear suits and ties. It psychologically damages me to put those things on. So that's what I'll tell you to do, right? At the same time, right? If you don't make a goal, don't beat yourself up about it, right? Don't beat yourself up about it, right? Make a plan, right, to defeat whatever it is that made you fail. Whatever it was, right, eliminate whatever that distraction was. Learn how to manage that distraction, whatever it was, right? That's why it's important to shut your phone off. Or if you can't turn it off, if you're one of those people, oh my God, I can't turn it off because there might be an emergency, put it somewhere else. Put it where you can't see it right now. Put it in a different room, right? Put it somewhere where you can't readily grab it and fucking distract yourself for 15 minutes looking at Instagram or whatever, right? So that's what that's the lessons for the day, right? If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Hopefully, I can't lose my train of thought, right? Exactly right. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. If there's something you want me to clarify, let me know about that as well. And we'll keep falling forward, right? Trying to get through this content so we can make folks ready to turn in their essays. Oh my God, I've got so many notes. Looking to see what else I've got coming. I don't need that stuff. Cool. Yeah. So the next class we're going to have is about argument, right? So that's what we're going to look at next. So we're gonna look at classical argument, what's considered to be Aristotelian argument. We'll look at Rogerian argument. We'll look at Tolmanian argument, and then we'll go back through claims and whatnot, because folks should be getting to the point where they're looking at how to develop their thesis statements and all that kind of stuff based on the research that they have compiled for their projects. So I thank you for the kind words. Hey, Backpedal. So thank you guys for the kind words. Thanks for being here, everybody. That's going to conclude today's class. So if you are one of my students and you got stuff to do, kick rocks. Go do something fun. I appreciate you hanging out with me, giving me about 20 extra minutes today so I could get through this stuff. So I'm going to put a stream marker here so we can I can cut this video down. My notes and whatnot will be published up on Blackboard later today, so you guys can look at those.